Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rich Harvey, CEO of Property Buyer, and welcome to our live webinar today on the topic of buy first or sell first, and also giving you an update on how to get prepared for the spring property market. Pleasure to have you on board. Thanks for taking the time, and would really encourage you to ask lots of questions. We want to make this as interactive as possible. We've got some great content and great speakers today. So at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Q&A box. So as we do our presentations, and if your question pops into your mind, please just tap your question into that box and we'll aim to get through all the questions at the end of the presentations today. So we'll leave plenty of time for that to happen. So before I get started, I'd like to introduce our other two guest speakers today. I've got Daniel Pym. Thanks, Daniel, for being with us.
Good.
Daniel is the Director of Loan Market at Double Bay, Erskineville and Castle Hill. He's got over 20 years experience as a mortgage broker and ideally placed to give you a great insight into how to ideally get the right loan that's going to fit your particular financial circumstances. He's also got a diploma of financial services and a mortgage broking and management financial planning diploma. So Daniel, wonderful to have you. We also have Elliot Flax, who will be shortly joining us. Elliot is the Principal and Managing Director of Ray White Double Bay. Again, he's got over 20 years experience in the eastern suburbs market with a fantastic record of achievements and some pretty high value sales under his belt. He's done over $80 million transaction and he really covers that market really, really well for his vendors. So so look, Daniel, I'm going to hand over to yourself and let you tell us about some of the pros and cons of buy first, sell first, and how we can sort of navigate the financial side of the transaction, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. Welcome, everyone. So today I'm just going to talk about the different options available when you're looking to, buy and sell. It can be a pretty stressful experience, trying to figure out, can you buy before you sell? Do you have to do it simultaneously? What happens if I sell first and can't find anything? So we understand that everyone typically buys and sells in spring and summer. And so now it's like a great opportunity to do your homework, sort of find out what your finance options are first. Hopefully get those options pre-approved, and then you can sort of focus on the fun stuff, which is trying to find a new home. So just a little bit of background. There's a picture of my team. We've got 3 franchises across Sydney, and we've won a lot of industry awards for customer service and being recognised as a good broker, basically. Just this next slide, it's just our financial services guide. So basically, today we're just talking in general information. We're not making any personal recommendations. When we do make those recommendations, it's after we've obviously spoken to you to find out what your goals and objectives are and done our homework. Okay, so the reason why I think clients use brokers is because we have a big panel of lenders. As most of the lenders in Australia are on our panel, including all the majors. And what really sets us apart when looking at these different options is we understand the different credit policies of lenders. So, for example, not all lenders do bridging loans. Some lenders may lend far more than others. And based on your circumstances, like some lenders might give you a much better interest rate than others. So it's good to have a big panel of lenders and a lot of options to choose from. So let's get into it. Hey, probably the first question we're asked when someone's looking to buy and sell is they want to actually buy first. When you buy the new home first, it allows you to, simply just move out of your current home into the new home, and then you can sell yours sort of at your leisure. But that sort of scenario doesn't really suit everyone. It's actually like it's a bridging loan. You might need to have a really big loan for a short period of time, and there's really only certain criteria that the banks will allow that to happen. So a bridging loan really suits clients that have a lot of equity in their home. Like this scenario that we're looking at here, the client owes $300,000 on a property that's worth $2 million. It really suits if they have good income, because on the portion on the right where it says end debt for $1,650,000, they need to be able to prove to the bank that they can service that debt. And also where you see that peak debt screen there, That's quite a large loan, and banks will really only approve that large amount if you've got enough savings in the bank to cover the repayments for a 6 or 12-month period whilst you settle into the new home and sell your current home. So this little graph is a little technical, but we sort of have to explain how it works. So how it would work in this instance is if we did a bridging loan, we could put a loan of about $1.8 million on the home that you're selling. Now, if you only owe 300,000, that's going to effectively give you cash out of 1.5 million. When you have that cash out of 1.5 million and you want to buy a home worth 3 million, that's a really big deposit that you get to put down. So if the plan is to sell your place for 2 million and buy a new place for 3 million, then including stamp duty and legal fees, you'd have to borrow, 3,150,000 on the new place. So with a bridging loan, if you put a big loan for 1.8 million against the house you're selling, and you have enough savings set aside to make those repayments for at least 6 months, then that's the first part done. The bank could give you a loan on that property and ignore it in terms of your ability to repay it. What the bank really would assess you on is that what the end debt is, which is 1,650,000. So what you're doing is you're taking 1.5 million deposit, you're putting that on a place for $3 million, and including stamp duty and legal fees, you'd have to have a new loan of 1,650,000. So as long as you can afford that debt on your current salary and you have enough equity in your property and you have enough savings to get you through that period, then the bank's likely to approve that loan for you. So clients love that option, but not everyone can actually, sort of make that happen. If you don't qualify for a bridging loan, this is where it gets a little bit trickier for clients. There's a few different options there, and some, every option has its potential downfall, So if you decide to sell your home first and you can't get a bridging loan, then what you'd typically do is you'd sell with a delayed settlement, perhaps like a 12-week settlement. If you did that, you'd have a pre-approval based on the amount of money that you could borrow for the next place, and you would sell your current home, then you would know exactly how much deposit you've got, and then we'd produce a budget for you so you could go out and buy a place. Now, if you had a 12-week settlement, that really what that's giving you is 6 weeks to sell your place. The downside of this strategy is if you don't find a place in 6 weeks, then you could be living with the in-laws for a little while, or you could be finding a short-term rental. The other option, it's probably a bit more riskier, is to buy first. So we figure out, approximately how much your home's worth, and assuming what it sells for, that's going to be the deposit on the next place. We go and get you the biggest loan that you're comfortable with or that the bank will approve, and we go and get that pre-approved. If you buy first of all, you've got to have the deposit available for the purchase, and second of all, you've got to give yourself time to then sell your place. So again, you do like a 12-week settlement, maybe a 16-week settlement. What you want to do is give yourself enough time so that you've bought and that you can make sure that you definitely sell your house, and then you match up the settlement dates. If it's the 1st of November, you want to literally move out of your old house in the morning and move into the new house in the afternoon. It can be stressful. It's not for the faint-hearted, but it's actually the way that the majority of people have to do it when they're upsizing their home. The risk with this option is if you buy first at the maximum price and then you sell for less than you think you're going to get, then that's going to actually leave you with a shortfall, and you might not actually sort of have enough money for settlement. So we have these conversations, every day with clients based on their own circumstances. And probably the easiest thing for me to do is to just give you a little brief understanding of how we sort of come up with our recommendations. Okay, so regardless of whether you're doing a bridging loan or buying and selling simultaneously, or you're a first home buyer or investor, the first thing we do after speaking to you and figuring out your goals is to look at this servicing calculation. This here is just a little bit of software that ranks all of the lenders on our panel from highest to lowest in terms of borrowing capacity. So we can see here there could be a couple of $100,000 in difference between what lenders will lend you based on your income. So that's the first piece of data. Find out what you want to do, and then find out who's actually going to give you the money that you need. So that's the first thing. The second thing that we would do for you is we look at this little funds position report. So, for example, this one here, you're buying a place for 1.5 million, including all the stamp duty, nearly $65,000 in stamp duty, government registration costs, your own legal fees, taking into account a deposit of 370,000, you'd need to borrow $1.2 million to have enough funds to settle. Okay, so our sort of feedback and our research would look at who would lend you $1.2 million. Make sure you've got enough funds to settle, and then of the lenders that would lend you that amount of money, who's going to give you sort of the deal that's most appropriate for you. So just like as a little sample here, we've picked 4 pretty well-known lenders based on their interest rates and their product. And you can see here that in this like little scenario here, Ubank could lend at 5.99% is their current variable rate. That's the lowest, like the cheapest lender. And then other really well-known lenders like ING, Macquarie, and the coming in sort of 4th place would be someone like a ME Bank at 6.19%. So that's sort of how we come up with our recommendations. Doing all the homework is what I recommend you do first. It's a horrible feeling to go to an auction or walk into a property and see the home of your dreams and not have a pre-approval. It's a really stressful experience. Even as a broker, we have many clients say, "Hey, can we get this loan approved in a day?" And yeah, it's possible, but it's not the ideal way. So my tip is that if you're thinking of upgrading the family home and it's something that you think you're going to do this year, get prepared. Talk to us or your broker or your bank. Get a pre-approval. Understand exactly how much you can buy for, how much deposit you need, and that's going to take a lot of stress out of this process for you.
Quick question for you, Daniel, just before we move over to Elliot. Just on that last example, like you use software, right, to work out the loan, who's got the most competitive loan.
Yes.
But also, is there any other qualitative factor that you might then recommend to a client about which particular lender? Because, like for me, if I'm an investor, I want the maximum loan amount. I'm always not so fussed about the rate. I am interested, absolutely, to get the cheapest rate.
Yeah.
But is there any other factor you would use in comparing different lenders?
Well, there's definitely a few, and it comes down to what we need. So, for example, if you need an approval in 24 hours, then not all of these lenders can do that. We have the top accreditation with lenders like the National Bank, Macquarie, ING, Commonwealth Bank. So if push comes to shove and you go into auction tomorrow night, it's probably going to be one of those lenders where we get the pre-approval. It also comes down to reputation. We don't want to recommend a loan and then 10 days later the loan's not approved. We don't want to recommend a lender if after settlement the client's annoyed and have terrible service. So lenders like ING has got the highest customer; they're the highest rated customer bank in Australia. We get great feedback from lenders like Macquarie Bank. So our recommendations are probably biased to the point of our experience says that if these lenders that we recommend have really good rates, really good products, turnaround times, and produce happy clients, that we're more likely to recommend those as opposed to ones where we've had a bad experience or they've let us down in the past.
Great. Thank you. That really answers it. Thanks, great. Thanks, Daniel.
Sure.
Appreciate your presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. If you can unshare your screen would be great. And welcome, Elliot. Made it just in time, mate.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it was a bit touch and go, but I'm glad I could be here to share some knowledge and my thoughts, especially sort of what's been happening over the last 3 to 6 months, because
Fantastic.
I think, property markets are constantly changing. And I think we are definitely in sort of, I believe, a little bit of a slower cycle or a bit of a downwards pressure. And I think sort of, buying and selling and which way to go.
Cool. We've lost you there. We've just lost you for a second, Elliot.
I cut out. So yeah, okay, sorry, yeah, yeah. So just saying, it's critical now to make those decisions on, based on your finances, like what Dan talked about,
Yep.
which way to go, because there is a lot of risk. You're playing with a lot of money.
Yeah, that's right. Is your audio connection Bluetooth? Is just double checking. It's just cutting in and out a little bit there. So
Oh, is that fine now?
that's okay now. All good. Now I've already done an introduction for you, Elliot. So I'll let you do your sort of overview of what you think's coming up, the pros and cons, the spring market, and then I'll jump into my presentation after yourself. So over to you.
Okay, perfect. I'll just get my screen so we can share.
Fantastic.
Can you guys see that?
Yep, we can see that. Yep, just put it into presenter mode. Yep, wonderful. Thanks,
Perfect.
Daniel.
Okay, so buy, sell first, getting your property ready for spring. So I think sort of from experience, I've been doing this for over 20 years now. The spring market is traditionally, an area where a lot more stock comes on the market. And from experience, usually the first lot of properties that come on, like in that late August, September, there is sort of a bit of a robust energy to them, so they can get some higher prices. It doesn't necessarily mean the market is going to continue on pathway, but it's usually just because you've had sort of quite a few buyers that have missed out in the winter period and then sort of quite keen to secure something before the end of the year. And so it sort of, you tend to find there is a bit of a upwards trend, and then either it's going to continue on that pathway, or it can sort of settle down, and depending on how much stock comes on the market, it can sort of look like it can soften a bit. And I think sort of seeing our stock levels, looking at Ray White, which is the number one agency in Australia, and we can sort of track the stock levels that are coming through. It looks like there are going to be quite a few more listings, and what that means sort of with the seasonality, increased inventory into the market, it actually can create a bit of a softening. And I think sort of what we're finding at the moment is that there's two types of buyers. There's buyers with a self-imposed limit, and there's ones with a bank-imposed limit. And I think sort of the ones with the bank-imposed limit, like what Dan was saying, like serviceability has definitely been affected. When a year and a half, 2 years ago, when people were being serviced at 2%, and what that meant sort of when they were stretch tested, they could borrow a lot more than what they can today. And so what that means, though, is that those people with the bank-imposed limits, yes, they want to buy the home, but maybe they've only got $1 million available. So what we're finding is the people that are cash buyers or banker mum and dad are coming into support are definitely the ones that are sort of winning or securing more of those properties than the ones that sort of unfortunately are service bank sort of challenged. But and what that is happening, though, is because there is an influx, and we're seeing it. We've got 20 sales agents, and in our Monday morning sales meeting, we run through properties, how many inquiries, how many contracts were taken, how many buyers inspected, and we're getting a sense that there are good inquiries on domain and realestate.com. Buyers are attending the properties, but contracts requested has come down a bit, and I think that sort of then will lead to a little bit of a softening. Now, I think the softening, if we looked at the market 2 years ago and where prices are, I still think we're seeing that there has been a good sort of tick up, but I just think there'll be some good buying opportunity. And that's why sort of leading into the buy first, sell first. I mean, I think in today's market right now, I would be suggesting to sell first. Just know the funds you have to play with, and that is on both sides of the ledger. Like, so if you are trading up and you want to buy something, you may actually get a better result than you expect in these uncertain times, and so you actually may be able to stretch yourself that little bit further to buy something that sort of you thought may have been out of reach. And so if you are going to go buy first, you may sort of be playing it a little bit too safe. And on the converse of that, I've seen it happen in different cycles. And I can see it a bit now where people have gone out and bought in March, April, and are putting their places on the market now with an expectation of, call it 1.5, 1.6. And if it's going to be 1.3, 1.4, I mean, that can have a critical effect on your serviceability, also on your lifestyle. An extra couple $100,000 in today's world, is a lot different to a couple $100,000 when rates were at 2%. So timing is everything in real estate, and hindsight is brilliant. I mean, I can't claim to be an oracle, and I think, most people, it's a bit of luck of the draw. So my suggestion, for first-time buyers, get into the market, because you never can pick exactly where it is. And I think as long as you're always got your foot on a property in Sydney, in Australia, which your prime residence is a tax-free asset, it's very hard to beat that asset. And especially the banks are amazing, where they lend you 80-90%, and you can gear up. So your $200,000 investment is worth $1 million. So the magnitude of that investment will far outweigh any or most. I mean, I'm not here to give financial advice, but from experience, the banks are kind to lend you a lot, and it's a tax-free asset. So definitely, I would be suggesting, if you haven't bought, buy in this market over the next 6 months, because when rates do change, the market does kick, and it kicks pretty quickly. And I wouldn't be surprised if the same thing happens again when sort of the economy sort of softens further. So that was benefits of buying and selling first. What to look for when selecting a real estate agent? I think that was another sort of question that you wanted me to sort of cover off on. Look, I think, there's, in a market which is a challenging market, and it's not just sort of make a listing and it sells itself. I would suggest to look for market share in a suburb. Which agency has got good market share? Because usually if they've got good market share, it means they've got a good depth of buyer. And I think, buyers right now are more valuable in a way than sellers. If you sort of, I mean, obviously both are important, but I think that, the buyer pool and those relationships are key, because when a buyer feels comfortable with an agency and trust, then they're prepared to sign a contract and commit to, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, which is a huge investment, plus stamp duty. It's everybody's or most people's biggest investment. I mean, the unique thing about, looking now, it's, compared to 20 years ago, an agent may have told you, oh, I'm the greatest, I'm the best, I've got all the listings in the area. But with realestate.com or domain.com, there's ways where those records are there online. So you can literally search the agent. You can search how many reviews they've had on Domain and Real Estate. You can see what rating star rating they have, what are their days of market, the average sale price. And I've just sort of shared below some of my career stats for the last 12 months. And so, like, if you are then looking in a certain area and your property is worth, in this case, like around 8, 9, or 10, well, then I may be the better agent or agency. Whereas if something maybe was $1 million, maybe even though I've got the runs on the board, you'd be like, well, hang on a sec, that my buyer pool may be a little bit different. So maybe even though I am a successful agent, but maybe I'm not the right person for that property, because you want to make sure the person who is selling it is selling in that price point, has buys in that price point, knows the recent sales, the competition. So there are definitely ways, with selecting an agent, which I think have become easier for owners to make decisions, and harder probably for junior agents to sort of, I suppose, fake it before they make it. But I think that the results are one thing, but energy, passion, I think are important as well. I think where a lot of owners sort of fall down a little bit is selecting an agent with the agent that gives the highest price, because I think that's sort of a recipe for disaster, and it happens quite a bit in the eastern suburbs. I'm not sure where the viewers are living, but I think that, with CoreLogic and other ways you can see comparable sales, median price, there's ways where you can look, to a bit of a variance on what properties are worth. But if someone's saying your place is worth 30% more, and you go, wow, they really believe in the property, I would say that may be a little bit of a false sense of reality. Also, another sort of point, which obviously is really important, is fees. I mean, obviously, there are different ways you can, negotiate with an agent. There's fees that range between, call it 1% and probably 2%, depending on the value of the asset. but you can also have incentive-based structures so, tying an agent to a fee or a price that they have suggested. So as an example, if a property's worth, I'll just use $1 million, easy numbers, you have like a base fee up to the million, maybe 1.5, and maybe 5% of the difference above. Or if they think it's worth 1.2 and all the other agents said 1.1, maybe you start a bit lower. You start at 1.1 up to that, and then they can have an incentive if they get their price. But rather than say, oh, well, the agent who had the highest price, I therefore am going to choose them because, they think that will let them put their money where their mouth is and put an incentive structure in place to select an agent. So the last thing I'm sort of just going to run through was preparing your property for sale. Now, there's, I think, some things you can do as an owner just to, I believe, add value and, as a cheap way to sort of, put your property up in lights, because you got to think, if your asset's worth $1-2 million, maybe $3 million, depending on what it's worth, to do some of these things that I'm suggesting, it may cost $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, but the investment you're making, you'll make double that, triple that, at least with presentation, because a lot of people aren't visual, they can't see. So some painting, carpeting, landscaping, styling, these are things where they will add value to the end price. And my suggestion as well is that sometimes, if you've got a 2 or 3 year plan to sell a property, that do some of these things early, paint the house and enjoy the property, because I think a lot of people I see, they do it at the very end and they go, oh, wow, it looks so beautiful. But sort of like those kind of things, like painting your exterior or your house, it lasts 7 years, 8 years. So why don't you get the enjoyment for like a year or two, as well as the next owner? So that would be my suggestion. And that is a bit of an update on the spring market and my thoughts.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Elliot. That's brilliant. Wonderful. You're a font of knowledge there. There's quite a few things. I took some notes that I'm going to pick up in my presentation that you kind of touched on, which was brilliant. So yeah, thank you so much.
That's a pleasure.
I'm going to share my screen now. Let me just pull up my presentations. Give me 1 second and I'll put my screen up. Number 2 is the one. There we go. So, yep, hopefully you're seeing that. All good, guys? You can see that? Yep. Yeah, great. So, yeah, I'm not going to do too much of a repeat today, but yes, no, there's my background. I won't go through it all. We're going to leave plenty of time for Q&A questions, but yeah, I've been in business 23 years, so it's been around the block quite a few times working on the buyer side. I just want to touch again, just to reiterate some of the pros and cons of buying before selling, talk about where I'm seeing the market, where I think the market's going. And then I've got some slides, which I won't go through today, but I'll send them out to all our attendees with a lot of case studies. But I want to leave plenty of time for the Q&A today. We've already got some good questions there coming through. So buy or sell first. This is this perennial dilemma that a lot of our clients are faced with. So just to reiterate again, the whole idea of buying before selling, if you are going to do that strategy, certainly it means that you won't miss out on your ideal property. It means you've got it. It means you're not rushing to move. You've secured the thing, and you can start upgrading it if you've got the financial ability to do that. But on the flip side, as Daniel's pointed out, you may need a bridging loan, and that means carrying 2 mortgages, paying a lot more interest. So you've really got to build into that equation what the finances are going to be. You've also got to really factor in market conditions. Is that going to delay the sale of your home so you're carrying that extra mortgage for a much longer period of time? And you don't ever want to be in a situation where you're pressured to accept an offer just to avoid that financial strain. So I think it's really important that you look at all the numbers and conditions really carefully. So on the other side of that, let's look at selling before buying, which is what Elliot just talked about is probably a good idea to be doing in this current market condition. And that simply means you know exactly what you've got for your property. You know how much you've got to spend on the next one. You can go in and make unconditional offers once you've done your due diligence on the other property, and you're not then carrying that second mortgage. The only thing is then if you can't find the property within an appropriate time frame, normally 6 to 8 weeks, whatever the settlement period is, you might need to move in with the in-laws, hope you get on with them, or you might need to rent for a couple of months or 6 months. So again, there is that time pressure. And again, this is a similar theme around market fluctuations. So I actually wrote about this in my last newsletter as well, which I'm sure some of you have read. If you haven't, you should read it. It's on our website. But I think the bottom line for all of this, our attendees watching, anyone watching later, is simply this. For me, the deciding factor on whether to sell or buy in that order is around market conditions. So in a normal market, I would definitely sell before I buy. But if it's a hot or a rising market, I would buy before I sell. So you've just got to be able to read the tea leaves, know the direction of the market, and talking to experts in the field is really going to help you make that correct decision. So let's have a look at where I'm seeing the market at the moment. Now, I've got some high-level numbers, and I'll talk about how you can interpret these things. We're actually just starting to see consumers have a little bit more, confidence in the market. The consumer sentiment index that Westpac and the Melbourne Institute measure has been even below 80 points. We haven't seen it this low since the COVID days, but it's gradually been ticking it up. It actually ticked up around almost 3% last month. So there's a little bit of a glimmer of hope. Could be seasonality, but a little bit of a glimmer of hope there. But interest rates are the biggest bearer at the moment. In terms of the auction clearance market, we're starting to see auction rates have dipped below 70%. So it's not a seller's market. It's not completely a buyer's market. It's still more a balanced market at the moment in that high 60s for Sydney and Melbourne. And I expect to see those sort of numbers probably dip a little bit more as we get more stock on market during spring. So probably low 60%, 65% is where I expect to see it in the coming months. Let's look at price changes. So CoreLogic has probably got the most robust numbers across each capital city. Sydney year to date has risen 5.6%. If you look back from, say, January to January, it was around 7 or 8%. So what it's showing is that the rate of price increases are slowing. I mean, Perth is off the charts and so many investors piling in there. I'd be cautious. Adelaide and Brisbane also firing because of affordability. Melbourne's a bit of an outlier, and I've talked a lot about Melbourne as being a great place to think about counter-cyclical investing or buying if you're an owner there. Big opportunity to buy in that market. But we are seeing, some of the pros, even in Perth, Adelaide, and Brisbane, we are seeing the rate of growth starting to slow right now. If we look at sales volume, so the number of properties actually transacted, definitely starting to see a positive increase in most of the capital city, quite significant increase there. Sydney, Melbourne, pretty similar numbers. And what's also encouraging, and this will be encouraging for yourself, Elliot, is just the volume is now trending upwards toward above the 5-year average mark. So numbers were down below the 5-year average for quite some time, and now we're starting to see it tick up above, which is really good news. Days on market, in other words, how long does it take to sell a property? In Sydney, it's currently sitting at around 34 days, Melbourne around 39 days. In Brisbane, only 20 days, Adelaide 28 days, and Perth 10 days. So that shows the strength of the market. Sydney, on average, is usually around 40 days, 42 days. So it still shows that it's still a competitive market. But again, these numbers mask incredible variations at a very local level. So if you're talking about a property in Parramatta versus Penrith versus Potts Point, they're all going to be very, very different numbers. So these numbers, just take them with a pinch of salt, but you've got to drill down into that localized market. Listing volumes. I guess the key takeaway from this slide here is to simply note that the total volume of listings out there, not just new listings, but the total volume of old and new listings is still, almost 16% below the 5-year average. And that's the thing that's interesting. So people are not trading their properties as frequently or not selling their properties for a number of reasons. One of those reasons is stamp duty. And the other reason is they can't find what they want to move into. So, again, when you find the right property, it's about making a good offer and moving on it, because don't expect to see, tens or hundreds of the same thing coming up anytime soon. If we look at listing volumes by state, some mixed numbers there. Certainly, the changes from year to year. increasing in Melbourne and Brisbane, down in Sydney, and way down in Canberra. Key takeaway from this slide is in dwelling approvals is that we're not building enough houses. As you've probably seen, it's always played out in the media, probably at least once or twice a week. We see property stories saying we're in a housing crisis, and it's pretty obvious why. And that's because we're not getting enough properties built and through the building pipeline. So even if properties are approved, not all of them are getting built because they just don't stack up from a feasibility point of view. So yeah, we're seeing monthly approvals decline around 6.5% in June again. So it's not a good omen. But if you're a property investor or a property owner, happy days. But if you're on the rental side of the equation, it's certainly going to be a lot tougher. And talking of rentals, what's interesting is rents are continuing to rise. And when I update my slides every time I do these presentations, last time the combined capitals was around 8.5%. We're now seeing it's around 7.8% national increase. So again, the rate of growth or the rate of rental increases is slowing, but it's still well above inflation. And that's a key inflation driver going forward. Vacancy rates in most capital cities is, again, historically very, very low, around 1%. Okay, let me get my crystal ball out. I know you can't put your hands up out there, but because you're on the screen, but love to get my little crystal ball and let's have a look at where prices are going. And the answer to this question is pretty obvious. It's going to depend on which direction interest rates go. And being a past economist, I can tell you that interest rates have peaked, despite what the Reserve Bank is saying. I don't believe we're going to see any more rate increases. Inflation's sticky, especially services inflation. So I think the next move will be a 0.25, could even be a 0.35% decline. The question is timing. I was predicting originally it would happen in December. However, I think it's more likely to happen now in February. And that's because the governor has said that they absolutely want to extinguish the inflation genie and get it back in the bottle. I think we'll see around 3, possibly 4 interest rate cuts in 2020, next year in 2025. So what that is going to do to the market is simply the first cut will restore confidence, and second, third, and fourth cuts will reignite the market. And as Elliot alluded to, the market can change quite quickly. So this is the thing to watch. If you're thinking, oh, the market's going to crash, and I get these weird emails from people saying, oh, Rich, you're all wrong, the market's going to crash. It's not. We're fundamentally undersupplied in property. And I can tell you that we will have a reignited property market, maybe not quite as strong as what we saw in the COVID turnaround. That was ridiculous. But we're certainly going to see a pretty strong to moderate growth over the next 2 to 5 years. The actual Domain price forecast through Dr. Nicola Powell from Domain, these are her numbers. She's predicting Sydney will do around 7%, Melbourne pretty average, Brisbane around 7%, Perth around 9%, Adelaide 8%, etc. So pretty strong price increases. So Sydney's median's currently just over 1.6. So if we're having this conversation next year, the median should be about 1.73. I mean, that's a significant number, isn't it, Daniel? I mean, that's 170 grand extra, right? I mean, it's not pretty hard to save up that sort of money, isn't it?
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. And same for units. We always see that units tend to underperform houses by about 2 to 3%, and the numbers are reflected here in these forecasts. But just remember, these forecasts are only 1 year. So, I won't show the slide today, but in my other presentations, I've actually looked back 25 years worth of data, and Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane's annualised capital growth rate is around 7.5%. So when you capitalise that over a 10-year period, it's a very significant number, which I won't talk about right now. But the message is catch the train before it leaves the station, or catch a train. It's just a question of which one you get on, whether you get on in September this year or next year. But the longer you leave it, the harder it is to chase that train down. So the other question I get asked, Rich, is when is the right time to buy? Everyone's trying to get their timing right. And my simple advice is when you have the borrowing capacity. It may not be the perfect market time, but I've seen so many people inquire with our business and then 4 years later go, oh, Rich, we had that conversation, we had a strategy chat, and now I'm finally getting back to you 4 years later. And Originally, they were talking about buying $1 million property, and now they can't afford that. Now they can afford 700. So higher interest rates, as we know, is keeping a lot of buyers very cautious. But buy when you're ready is honestly the best time. And as we indicated, there's a lot of conditions that make it the ideal time to buy right now. All right, let's have a look quickly just at, I guess, what we could do as buyers agents. So I get asked another question, is it worth using your services? And for those that don't know, the word advocate really just simply means someone who puts their case on someone else's behalf. They advocate on behalf of someone else. So as you know, we work exclusively for buyers. We focus 100%. We don't sell. We just give independent advice. We take clients through this 7-step process of helping them with a strategy, identifying where to buy, what price to pay, giving them fantastic research, saving them lots of time in the searching process and uncovering a lot of off-market properties as well, and then helping them to really drill down and evaluate which is the best one to go for, and then doing the due diligence, having that independent negotiator who knows how to negotiate really well, and then executing the opportunity. I see a lot of buyers will possibly even fall over at the negotiation or even the exchange process. Actually, Daniel, you'd be interested. During COVID, we actually beat a lot of buyers to the punch by literally half an hour, even 10 minutes sometimes, just by turning up at an agent's office with a signed contract, 66W, and knowing how to execute prior to anyone else getting in front of us. There's a few little tactics we use like that. So yeah, there's a couple of key advantages. And there's different levels of service we can offer. We can offer the full search, praise negotiate, auction bidding, vendor advocacy, and property management as well. And I've also done a little slide here just to kind of compare what it's like doing it on your own versus using a buyer's agent. So it's a bit like, I could do my own tax. I could fix my own car. I could paint my own house. I could do all of those things. But do I really want to? Do I really have the time? Do I really have the expertise? I could make my own furniture. I'm actually, I love doing woodwork, but it's not cost effective for me to make my own furniture. So I think same thing with a buyer's agent. If you want the best representation to help you make a decision on the most significant asset that you're going to buy, it's absolutely worth getting advice and paying well for that advice versus having a crack on your own, perhaps not getting the right advice or paying the right price and buying in the wrong area. And also, particularly, I put out a little post yesterday, which I quoted someone who said it, and they said, your net worth is determined by your network. Your net worth determines your network. In other words, it's who you know can help you get to where you want to go. So for our clients, we have amazingly good relationships with a whole range of agents across multiple markets. And we get access to properties in our inbox a long time before they'll hit your inbox or go public. And that gives our buyers a considerable advantage. I won't go into the fee structure, but it's all there. It's a fixed fee structure, etc. And there's some of the benefits. I guess the other thing to say is that, in terms of who we are as a company, I drill into my team this concept of customer care and really having an understanding of their needs. And it's not a one size fits all type approach. It's very much about client interests first, which I believe was legislated, right, in the financial broking market, wasn't it, Daniel? The brokers' best interest. Didn't they recently pass some legislation like that?
They did. Brokers have to work in the client's best interest and put the client's interest above ours.
Exactly. So
interestingly, the banks don't have to do that.
There you go. So another reason to use a broker. So I've got a bunch of case studies, but I'm going to stop sharing there and I'll leave that for another day. And we'll go into Q&A. We've got, fantastic. We've got lots of questions. Elliot, you're ready for some questions to be thrown at you? Yeah?
Sure,
Excellent.
Of course.
So you guys can probably see them as well. If you just click on the Q&A box there as well, you'll see the questions come up, but I'll read them out. First one's for you, Daniel. Hi, dealing with banks, even through a broker, leaves me cold. Are non-bank lenders becoming more competitive?
Yes, they are. They're a great alternate to the big four. It's probably why we have such a big following with the likes of the INGs and the Macquarie banks. There's even a new lender on our panel called Athena. They've only just started using brokers. They're actually they're owned by super funds, by industry super funds, and their borrowing capacity is far higher, probably at least 10% higher than most of the mainstream banks. So yeah, you do have to look further afield. I mean, I think it's like a bell curve with brokers. Some brokers can handle the volume and have good systems in place, and others just sort of can't do that.
Excellent, thank you. Marcio is asking, when buying first, what is the likelihood to negotiate a late settlement on the new home? How long could it be? 3 to 4 months. Elliot, what do you think about that?
So I think that it is possible, and usually my experience that the higher the price, the more likely you are to negotiate a slightly longer settlement. Usually, if it's a smaller property, they're usually wanting to sort of get those funds within 6 weeks. But I mean, it doesn't cost to ask the question. And usually, if you ask early in a campaign and present it off early, you may more likely to get it as you're coming towards auction. Then, if there's 2 or 3 bidders and 2 are on a quicker settlement, and that's the owner's preference, you may find it's less of a chance to get it.
Yeah, it's all part of the negotiation process too. That I've found is that if we are advocating for a client and asking for a long settlement, it could actually suit the vendor because they need time themselves to find their next property. So you can absolutely ask for it. Deborah's asking, small loans for retired people looking at relocating from Moss Vale to Sydney. What should they consider? Daniel.
The first thing you want to do is speak to your lender and ask if they can just do a substitution of security. One of the issues when you're retired is if you can't prove in today's market that you can afford the loan that you need, then when you sell in Moss Vale, they might make you pay out the loan entirely. So if you can do what's called a substitution of security and you just simply swap the loan from Moss Vale to Sydney, that'd be ideal. That'd be like the least stressful way to do it. And the first thing to do, just speak to your current lender and find out what their process is. And probably the thing with small loans is they often have terrible interest rates. So what I would do is I would make sure, as a broker, we would renegotiate that for clients. But I would just, whoever the lender is, just jump on their website, find out what they're offering new customers, then have a look at your rate, and then call them up and say, hey, hang on, I'm a loyal customer. I've got a small loan, but I'm paying a high rate. How about you offer me the new customer rate and I'll stay.
Excellent. Love the approach. Really good. Elliot, this one's for you. When selling a 2-bed, 2-bath, 1-car apartment in the eastern suburbs, what's the most common commission structure and what would be a fair agent fee? And are marketing fees really needed?
I mean, 2 good questions. I think sort of, I'd say a fee for a 221 is probably 1.65, including GST, would be sort of where you could land. And marketing, I mean, I'm a big believer in marketing. What do you need to do to market though may differ. I mean, I think the portals are a really powerful way to engage buyers. The papers are probably becoming less relevant, but also I suppose those pricings are coming down for the papers as well. So, I mean, when I first started over 20 years ago in real estate, the rule of thumb was spending like 1% of your property value on a marketing campaign. So a $2 million property, technically would be, $20,000. Now, you probably can get away with at the moment somewhere between $10,000 and $12,000. So you're spending 0.5%. So on a $1 million property, it's about 1%, which is not unreasonable.
I'd say on that, you can't sell a secret. If I was selling a property myself, I'd want to appoint the best agent I can find. I'd probably seriously consider styling it, like I think you advised in your presentation, because you only get one chance to create a good first impression, and you want to create that emotional hook with the buyer when they're going through the property. Bridget asking, should you trust realestate.com value for valuing your current home for sale? Simple answer to that is no. The automated vals that you see online can be grossly misleading. They can either overstate or understate considerably. So definitely don't do that. Definitely engage someone like ourselves or talk to a local agent to give you at least 5 to 6 comparable and relevant sales, not just sales, but relevant sales. Guys, both of you, what are your thoughts on this point?
Yeah, I think you are hitting it true. I think sort of sometimes when you have probably an area where the median price is quite stable and you're not getting sort of such a variance, maybe realestate.com would sort of be an area where you could see, but in the eastern suburbs, there is such a variance between one side of the road, the other, view, no view, flat, sloping, that 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 their variances are there, and it's just a number that takes all the properties. So I don't know, maybe if you're in an area where sort of it's a bit more of a grid, or that it's a new subdivision and there's 50 lots that are similar, you may find that realestate.com are probably more likely on the money.
Hmm. Daniel, any thoughts on that question?
Yeah, I think the same thing. If you're having a look at a block of units and they're all brand new and similar aspect, it's pretty easy to get a handle on their value. But we know from doing the property reports that we do for clients who are thinking of buying that there's a big difference between like the pictures and versus whether they've done a renovation and the aspects. So I think in trying to get the right value, you need to go to the source, and you really do need to speak to an agent and not just get their opinion, but ask them to back it up with comparable sales within the last 6 weeks within the last 4 block radius.
Just to finish off on that, local agents will definitely give you the most localized knowledge. You can also get an independent valuer and get them to have a look at the property as well. They tend to be a little bit more conservative, but they're very thorough in their approach. And the other thing, when we do our appraisals slash valuations for clients, we look at 9 to 10 different factors, and we look at things like aspect, slope, floor plan, condition, aspect to it, proximity to amenities, construction type. So there's a number of different factors. And as Elliot pointed out, there's huge differences. Like in Bellevue Hill, for example, with a median price of almost $10 million, that can be, versus a property on New South Head Road with busy traffic can be vastly different in that one suburb. Neville's asking, can we get a copy of the presentation? Yes, it will be emailed to everyone this afternoon with the copy of the recording. Brett's asking, where can I find the average days on market for upper price brackets, 2.5 to 3, 4 to million? Lots of the data gets skewed toward first homeowners. Daniel, Elliot, any thoughts on where you can get that data?
The days on market, well, I think days on market are not, that there is no set number for those value of the property. It's agent specific. Some agents, $2.5 million property, they may price it at 3.5, and those days on market could be 150 days. But if you're going to agents in the area that I've got good market share, you can sort of see. But at the moment, I'd say days on market are sitting between sort of 30 to 35 on average.
Core logic, Brett will just give you the days on market for that suburb. As Elliot said, they won't break it down by price bracket, but it'll be days on market for both units, houses. So yeah, it's just done by property type, not by price bracket. Deborah's asking, what's the cost of using your services? I think that was asked during my presentation. That will be in our pack there, but on average, we do a fixed fee. It's between 1.5% to 2%. So any property under $1 million, we charge 2%. Then we have a sliding scale between 1 million to 2 million. So it starts at 2 and ends up at 1.5. Anything over 2 million, it's just 1.5% as a fixed fee. You pay an engagement fee of between 3,000 to 5,000, and then the balance on exchange of contracts. And we do the fixed fee just for the simple reason we don't want to have any perception of bias in the way we negotiate with agents. It doesn't matter to us, an extra dollar on the fee as to what you're going to pay. Someone is asking, is there a risk of going to a non-lender for refinancing? Daniel?
If not exactly sure what they mean by non-lender, but if they're a lender on our panel, then Loan Market has vetted them and we think they're worthy. I think the main reason for refinancing, if it's not cash out, if it's just to reduce their interest rate or extend the term, just has to be worthwhile. That's the main thing. So look at the difference in the interest rate, look at the difference in repayment, make sure the juice is worth the squeeze. If it's a lender you've sort of never heard of before, then it's always good to have a look at their reviews and have a look at the customer feedback to make sure that you're going to be happy where you go there. From my sort of rationale and process is we like to stick with the big banks if we can get the best deal from them. And we do consider the second and third tier lenders, but we've got to have a good reason for it.
I remember years ago, Rams home loans.
Yeah.
They ran into a bit of trouble at one point. I think I had a few loans with them. We ended up with, I forget which lender it was, but yeah. But again, you'll give the right advice to your clients as to where they're going to end up in terms of the quality of the lender, right?
Interestingly, Rams shut their business last week.
Oh, there you go.
Were amalgamated into Westpac, who already owned them. So yeah, you definitely. What I like to deal with the bigger banks from the point of view that they have those market pressures to hold a good level of service, and sometimes the smaller lenders just don't have the processes in place. So the gripes that you get is that you can't get hold of them, they're too slow, they're frustrating to deal with. So it is a key thing that I look out for when I make a recommendation is, is the client going to be happy, down the track, or am I going to get calls saying, hey, what have you done?
Yeah. Everybody wants good service, I tell you. Yeah. I think we're almost done. Non-lender has given additional borrowing with the increase in interest rate. Is it good to borrow now and invest? Well, yeah, what do you think, Daniel? Elliot, is now a good time to invest?
To your point, Rich, you said before is, buy when the time's right for you. So if you can afford the repayments and you have time to go and look for the property or engage an agent, that's probably the right time to go and invest. A lot of clients, like Rich was saying before, they maybe procrastinate, or they take their time actually getting to the starting line. And so if you've got the loan pre-approved and you can do it now, then certainly it's how long you're in the market more than timing the market that I think makes you the most money.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, fantastic. We've got one more question. Would you be looking to sell now in Sydney or hold off for a while? Ooh, good question. What do you think about that one, Elliot?
I think if someone's got if they're downsizing and they've got sort of a couple of year horizon, I'd say wait. I just think that sort of when rates come down, based on your predictions, and I'll probably concur with that sort of early in the new year. I'm sure Dan does as well. Hopefully that does happen. But I think we'll see at least, if not a spike, a significant spike, but I think a strengthening. And I think sort of you get one chance to sell something. And I just feel like that if you need to sell now or you're trading up, it's a great time to trade up. But if you're a downsizer, I'd suggest to hold off.
Yeah, as an investor, I'm always looking to hold, never to sell. But if you're a home buyer, obviously your life circumstance will dictate what you need to do. And yeah, but again, trying to pick the perfect time to buy and sell is really tricky. So, if the right property came up and you thought, oh, wow, that'd be great, suit my needs, you just sell now. And the relativity between buying and selling now versus 6 months, it's all relative. So it's really just not going to be a major issue. Well, look, I think we might wrap it up there, guys. Can I just say thank you so much, Daniel Pym, Elliot Plax, for being with me today.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
See you guys.
Thanks, Rich.
Thanks, great. So thank you, everyone, for watching. A copy of the presentation will be sent out to everybody who's attended the webinar today, and a copy of the slides as well. So thanks for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye for now.
Thank you.